Here we go. This is a test run episode of my first video vlog about the fish out of water. Fish out of water is it's gonna be a channel mostly dedicated to uncensored dolphin review, you know. Um, this is not gonna be the channel for stats. This is not gonna be the channel for you just throwing out numbers to show a player had a good game, et cetera, et cetera. Like the Tua fans love to say he had 100 passer rating over the last 3 years. He's the only quarterback to blah, 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 blah. Numbers are facts and numbers are truth. But when they tell you numbers don't lie, they do lie when they don't give you the context of everything that you're reading in a stat line or that you're reading in the stat box. So this is basically armchair quarterback, you know, with some sort of football IQ, some sort of knowledge base to work from, instead of just the passionate fan that's a casual fan that just started watching football within the last decade of their life or so. The part-time fans. I have such a disdain for the part-time fans, but you know who you are. This is for the hardcore ride or die Miami Dolphin fans. The Miami Dolphin fans will realize that we will continue to cheer for this team, even though we may go to our graves without ever having seen these boys win a Super Bowl. And that's how real it is. Now, we ain't going to be changing teams because somebody else went in or this, here, that, and the other. This is do or die Miami Dolphins all the way live. Either with us or you against us. We deal in absolutes. There is no gray area. So who am I? I'm just a guy, just Jag, just a guy, just a regular old Dolphin fan, man. Um, I would give you the government, but I was advised to hold off on that one right there. But I mean, if you know it, you know it. This is initially going to start off as a channel for family and friends anyway. This is going to be my first audience until it grows and becomes something else. Maybe it goes from a vlog to a podcast. Who knows? But the goal here is to establish fan bases all around the nation, because all of y'all are fish out of water if you don't reside in the fish tank. And what's the fish tank? The fish tank is Miami. That's, if you not in, we're going to say the city of Miami, Miami-Dade, you're not in the fish tank. If you're outside of the area, you're technically a fish out of water. You know what I mean? So because you're not residing in the city, it makes you a fish out of water. And the fish out of water needs to be a nationwide group that takes over. If we got a bar, wherever, okay, we got a bar, but I would like to see us become a type of fan base that gets together and we take over somebody's bar. When it's time for the Dolphins to play the Steelers, let's go to the Steelers bar in whatever city and take over that bar. When it's Dolphins versus Falcons, we'll go to the Falcons bar in Atlanta and take over that bar. When it's Dolphins versus whoever, Jaguars, we in Jacksonville, we taking over whatever the Jags #1 bar is. We just there to set up shop and to make sure that our presence is felt. But that's on down the road. That's as it grows. Right now, I got 2 followers, and this is just my test video. So we got a long way to go before we get there. But anyway, like I said, lifelong Dolphin fan since 1983, 1984. I can remember living in Miami and getting my first Dolphin jersey outfit, however you want to call it, because we weren't just getting jerseys back then. They used to sell the whole outfit, helmet, shoulder pads, the jersey with the pants. My Auntie Mary took me to a store called Zayre's. You from South Florida, you know Zayre's. If you ain't from South Florida, you don't know Zayre's. But Zayre's is no longer in existence. But that's where we used to get the That's where you used to go to get your Dolphin jersey from. If I remember correctly, it was either 00 or it was Dan Marino. Yeah, who knows? I'm 4 or 5 years old at that particular time. So, but all I knew was I like those colors. I don't even think I had seen the game. I just understood inherently that I was a Dolphin fan. So I would spend my summers, early summer, my parents after my parents got divorced. I would stay with my dad for the summer, and he used to have this football right here in Opelika off Superior Street. Shout out Opelika. Uh, he had this football that he had from a game a long time ago. Him and my oldest brother went to a Dolphins game, and they caught a. It was either an extra point or a field goal. I can't remember which one it was, but anyway, they caught the ball in the end zone. This is before they put the nets up, and they got to keep it as a souvenir. You can't do that today. They kick you out of the stadium and make you give up the ball. I believe. I don't know. Let the ball come to me. We gonna the ball gonna stay with us, but we leaving the stadium. That's fine. We got that souvenir. Y'all ain't getting out of that. I promise you that. Not as much as I paid for that ticket. But yeah, man. And I believe the first game I watched was the Dolphins preseason game with my dad. Dolphins versus Bears. It's like 1985. And we watched that game on TV. And my dad did some silly stuff. Shout out to my dad, Peter Napoleon Williams II. But that is the first person who introduced me to the Dolphins. You know, my Uncle Peter tell you that he was the one that made me a Dolphins fan, but I keep telling him it's not the reason I'm a Dolphins fan. Um, but he reinforced my fandom. So yeah, I have to give on that. My dad did not take me to my first Dolphins game. The first ever Dolphins game that I did go to was with my Uncle Peter. It was me, my Uncle Peter, my cousin Sheldon. We went to a Dolphins versus Vikings game. Pretty sure that was like 86, 87, somewhere in there. But that was around about the time when I was able to be able to start to follow the game, understanding what a what a first down was instead of just cheering when they cheered because we scored a touchdown. I was just mimicking what they were doing, but me actually being able to understand the game came from watching the Super Bowl between the Broncos and the Giants with my Uncle Peter. We was living in California at that point in time. But somehow, some way, watching that game gave me a better understanding of what I was looking at when I was watching the Dolphins play. And I believe that next year was my first year playing football at Citrus Park for the Citrus Park Patriots. Shout out to Citrus Park, Gun Highway, Odessa, Tampa, Florida, Ben Hill Junior High School. If you know, you know. Let's see, we was living in Tampa at that particular time, but I still kept coming to South Florida, spending the summers with my dad. And then must have been 13 or so. My cousin Sean took me to Dolphins Redskins. I believe it was a preseason game, but this was 1990, I believe, and that was the first year. That was the first year that I learned the Dolphins fight song. Me, 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 me. Miami has the Dolphins, the greatest football team. We take the ball from goal to goal like no one's ever seen. We're in the air, we're on the ground, we're always in control. And when you say Miami, you're talking Super Bowl because we're the Miami Dolphins, Miami Dolphins, Miami Dolphins #1. I ain't gonna sing the rest of the song. If you know, you know, but uh, but that was the first year she actually taught me the words to the song. And I remember we saw that defense. It was Lewis Oliver blew somebody up on the play. Wow, big old hit. And that was the first time that I learned that we weren't, it wasn't a boo. We were saying Lou, because Lou bring that fire, make him come up off that ball. You know. Yeah. Shout out to Lewis Oliver, who I believe is probably the greatest, top one or two Dolphins free safety of all time. Used to watch that dude. Just love watching that dude just bring him, um, blowing up plays, running backs, wide receivers coming across the middle. Just Lewis Oliver was a beast, bro. Um, that's what I should have did. I should have. Yeah, I think I'm pretty sure I got it. So hold on a sec. Let me see if I can find my goal real quick. No, we'll start it. So I should have been prepared for this, but I think I got it. I think I got it. I'm pretty sure I have it. Yep, I do. Cool. That's for me later on. Anyway, so what was that? What was that? I gotta leave off that. Learning Dolphins fight songs like 1990, Lewis Oliver, yeah, and then I guess 91. Yeah, that's when I was able to follow the draft. Or was it 92? Somewhere in there. When I really started to pay attention to the draft. Whatever year it was that we drafted Tim Bowens, that might have been like 94, 95 later on. But I the concept of the draft was big because I remember they were talking about free agency. Free agency had come into the NFL at that particular point in time, somewhere between 91 and 92. I think that was the 75th anniversary of the NFL. And that was the first time I had ever heard that the Dolphins roster was stacked. Man, I wish I would have pulled this. That's what I'm saying. This, I don't have this ain't gonna be like your regular shows. I'm not gonna be pulling stuff up off the internet and web. I mean, maybe later on in the future I get to that stuff. This is just me talking to the camera, as my Dolphin fandom. Um, but whatever year that was that we drafted Tim Bowens, that was when I really started to follow the draft that year. And I want to say that was the same year we drafted Zach Thomas, but anyway, I had been looking for this for a long, 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 long time. This man got put into the Hall of Fame as a Miami Dolphin, and I could not find this card, and I was hurting so bad. But oh my goodness, I was lucky enough to still have and find. I don't know if it'll show it. Yeah, this is my Zach Thomas pre-rookie card, man. Put that up to the camera, see if it was still showing. Maybe I gotta be behind me. Yeah, that comes out better. But bro, when we drafted this man, bro, when we drafted this man, it was that preseason. He came out and Jack Del Rio was the starting linebacker. And I remember it because it was whatever football game came out. I don't remember if it was Madden or not. It was whoever was competing with Madden. Maybe it was uh game day or something. I don't remember exactly. I don't think it was Madden. Maybe well, I think it was Madden. They had the game day roster. I mean, opening day. They had Kareem Abdul-Jabbar starting running back. This was no, this wasn't Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. I'm sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. This was Jack Del Rio. That's where I left. I'm sorry. They had Jack Del Rio as a starting linebacker. And then like 2 weeks later, Jack Del Rio wasn't on the team. because Jimmy Johnson had seen enough of Zach Thomas on the practice field and was like, that was our starting linebacker. And how I knew Jimmy was right was that week one, somewhere it was in the first half, maybe the first quarter, second quarter, Zach Thomas laid a devastating hit on Deshaun Jefferson, I believe. I want to say that's who that was. I could be wrong, but he just laid the man out. Wow. Bro took a Tua knockout on the field. Yeah, I mean, he was asleep on the field, knocked out. And when I saw Zach Thomas deliver that hit, I was like, whoa. That was the hardest hit that I remember ever seeing live. You saw the replays on the NFL films and highlights plays of the week and stuff like that. But that's the first one that I can recall just losing my stuff right off the bat when I saw that hit. Because Buddy went down like the flag when they get detached from the pole. He just dropped to the ground. I was like, whoa, that dude can hit. And he was like the number 3 linebacker on the game or whatever. And then I instantly moved him up on the franchise and saved that in the depth chart and made Zach Thomas my starting linebacker. This was before they were doing um, real-time updates. This is long before PlayStation 1. We're playing on, I believe, the Super Nintendo at this point in time. Yeah. But yeah, so Zach Thomas was the first jersey that I ever bought for myself. I had jerseys before they were gifted to me or birthday, Christmas, stuff like that. I had my Brian Cox jersey. I had my Sam Madison jersey. I had my Sam Madison came later on, but Zach Thomas was the first jersey that I remember using my own money that I had saved up to go and get it because I wanted to have Zach Thomas. Nobody knew who Zach Thomas was, but I knew I wanted that jersey. His jersey it didn't exist yet, but I knew that was what I wanted. That was the first one that I bought for myself. Yeah, I remember that defense was growing, and then Jimmy Johnson took over. When Jimmy got there, him and Dan weren't on the same page, et cetera, et cetera. And then Dave Wanstead took it over. I firmly believe that the Miami Dolphins are potentially cursed because of the way Dave Wanstead and Jimmy Johnson handled Dan Marino. You don't handle a legend like that, bro. Um, while Dan was definitely on the decline, it doesn't mean that he wasn't still the guy to take us to a Super Bowl because my wish, I got 2 wishes, man. 2 wishes. 2 big all-time Dolphin wishes. I wish that Dan Marino and Ricky Williams would have played in the same backfield together. Yeah. Instead of Jay Fiedler, the year that we traded for Ricky, if Dan Marino could have still been our quarterback. Just that one. Ricky's first year with the team could have and should have been Dan's last year with the team. And I believe in my heart of hearts that team would have won a Super Bowl. You know, maybe that's just wishful thinking from Homer J. Dolphin himself, but I just firmly believe that if we would have had that combination, Ricky Williams taking handoffs from Dan Marino, he would have had all 11 in the box, and he would have left Dan to have one-on-one with wide receivers on the outside and just throw that thing up to Chris Chambers or Old Dave McDuffie or Oronde Gas, and I forget who was on. Man, I cannot recall the rosters at all right now. I gotta my Dolphin memory will get jogged. I'm just getting to a point to where I can freely express my fandom. Not that it was being suppressed before, but I just wasn't in a place where I could, be a content creator and just put my fandom out there as I wanted to. It was something that I had to work on. and get to a point to where I could do that. So, um, yeah, we here now. Uh, but yeah, I firmly believe how Dave wants to handle Dan Marino cursed our franchise, and, and ever since then we have not won a playoff game in the last 25 years. This is a fact of the matter. You want to bring up numbers, you want to bring up stats. That's a stat for your ass. The Miami Dolphins have not won a playoff game in 25 years. Why is that? Whole bunch of factors, man. Lack of organizational leadership, lack of front office leadership. I would say, I can't say bad ownership, just bad decisions during the ownership because Wayne Huizenga was a good owner. I don't care what nobody says. Um, Wayne Huizenga did what he could do. He threw money at the Dolphins as best he could. Then he sold it to Mr. Ross, and Mr. Ross, he should have kept Bill Parcells around, because he didn't know what he was doing. He didn't have any sort of football czar to institute a Dolphin way, so to speak. But you acquired a team, it became profitable. It was a winning team under the roster that Bill Parcells and Tony Sperano and them had built. So why would you, not make it a place where Parcells could keep his fingerprints all over that team and just, let him be the football czar and just, damn it, man. But that wasn't my choice. I wasn't the billionaire that bought the team. But seems to me if you were smart enough in your lifetime to acquire $1 billion and have a net worth of however many million, multi hundreds of millions that Mr. Stephen Ross is worth, how could you not be so smart to keep Bill Parcells or make it an environment that he would want to stay in instead of doing whatever it was that he did and making all of these changes and just not letting the man continue to build the organization on the football field the way that an organization should be built. And you do all of the back end billionaire stuff and build the F1 track and the other facilities and you know the real estate land mogul that you are. Do that, be that, but let Bill Parcells do his thing. But I never understood why they didn't work out. I know some of those guys out there know, and they've reported it. I'm not recalling it right here. And this is in this particular video. It's supposed to be like my sort of Dolphin fan verification video, as it were. I got to verify myself. I got to justify my fan. You ain't no Dolphin fan. Shit, what? Ask anybody who know me. Um, yeah, I'm off track. But anyway, um, I just wanted to speak just from the heart, right off the top of the dome as a Dolphin fan. Uh, what else? Dave Wanstead, the way they handled Dan Marino, cursed the team, Ricky Williams. Oh, Ricky. I listen. There's a bunch of Dolphin fans out there who still hate Ricky Williams to this day. I was never mad at Ricky. I understood exactly. Ricky, love you to death, bro. You will always be the greatest Dolphins running back in the history of the Dolphins that I ever saw with my own two eyes. I know we got Kick and Merck and Zunk and you know the great Dolphin running backs of the past. I would even include Lamar Smith. He's the last Dolphin running back to win a playoff game. But yeah, nah, man, Rick Williams, bro. I never held it against you that you left the team to go be with Mary Jane. She's a bad girl, and I love her too. Uh, yeah, she you know, Michael Jordan loved Mary Jane. They don't want to talk about that part of the game. That's why he voted against them not testing for marijuana because it helps you recover. And, we ain't going to get into all of that. But Ricky understood what the medicinal qualities of marijuana were. Dave Wanstead basically ran that man into the ground, 300 plus, 325 plus carries, 2, 3 years in a row. Ricky was like, bro, listen, That's not the game we finna play. And I understood that because Jay Fiedler was he wasn't my favorite quarterback at that point in time, but again, he was on Jay Fiedler to replace Dan Marino at that point in time. And that's a tough thing. That's a tough ask, man, to ask that dude to replace Dan Marino. So big up to Jay Fiedler, appreciate your efforts. In hindsight, while I might have been mad at you back then and cussing you out with my pop back then, and you know, pops, not my dad. My dad had passed by that time, but my father got my dad and my stepdad, which is my pops. I call my father my pops, and I call my stepdad my pops. I call my dad my father my dad. I call my stepdad my pops. Anyway, two fool ass Dolphin fans, man. I wish both of them was here, and I would just be talking to them. Just oh man, I wish we could have that. But anyway, um, yeah, man, the way they handled Dan Marino and Ricky Williams retiring, and then the Wildcat comes along, and Bill Parcells and them got the team humping. The defense was huge, bro. Man, Kendall Lang and I can't remember all of the boys that Parcells had drafted, but that defensive front was big, bro. Them dudes was averaging like 6'7", 6'8", 275, 280 pounds, man. Like, you didn't want to see that Dolphins front, man. Them dudes were hit. That was the biggest team that I had ever seen on the field that Parcells built. And that was his MO. He liked big dudes like that. Um, so then we go into the I guess what was that Philbin era? Or the Cam, yeah, I guess Cam Cameron the first. Yeah, and listen, I was so glad I was over with it 1 year because I had to go fly down there for the one game that we won. I was working at Optimal Service Solutions, A1. I can't remember the brother's name, but to rich Miami brothers. Anyway, they weren't brothers. They were brothers, but they weren't brothers. They were white guys, Jewish white guys. Cool as hell, man. Gave me the tickets to go see the Dolphins. I believe it was the Ravens. Was that game that we played them? Dolphins Ravens. I went down there. I had to go inspect it for myself because we was like 0 and 10, 0 and 11 at that point in time, 0 and 8. I was like, man, listen. Yeah, I go to the game. So I went down there, watched the game with my pop, and we won that game. I'm talking about, we left the stadium, fans crying, teared up. We all cheering and hugging strangers. We don't know each other because we weren't the worst team in NFL history because we was on that path. Boy, let me tell you, we did not win a game that season. We would have what matched the winless Bucks. Was it back in the 70s? Was 77 bucks? No, no, so not 77 bucks. I can't remember, but the Bucks didn't win nah game. Nah game. And yeah, we would have been tied for the worst, second worst, or one of the worst in NFL history. So I had to go down there personally and see about them boys. And Greg Henry caught that thing and took off down the field. I like to think that I had everything to do with that. You know what I'm saying? Because I had to go check on the boys personally. Um, Got rid of Cam Cameron. I believe Philbin came in. I didn't like Philbin either. I said, what you hiring the offensive line coach of the Packers? I think that's what he was. I can't remember right now, man. My Dolphinism will grow with the channel as I, start to retain and remember and have my total recall on during my Dolphin fandom. Yeah, Cam Cameron, Joe Philbin. The Philbin teams, man, you know, everybody mad at Ryan Tannehill. Tua's better than Tannehill. Listen, I'm gonna tell you the distinct difference between Ryan Tannehill and Tua Tagovailoa is this. Ryan Tannehill, we never tanked for Tannehill. There was no tank for Tannehill. We tanked for Tua. Ryan Tannehill was never hailed as the franchise savior. He was never meant to come in and start. He was supposed to hold the clipboard for at least 2 years behind David Garrard. But because David Garrard don't know how to walk in a pool or whatever the hell was going on with him, he injured his foot or whatever, and his career was over with. And we already knew what Matt Moore was. So you might as well throw the rookie in there and see what you got. And the fact that we had just hired his college head coach as our offensive coordinator, I mean, just I understood why they made the pick, and we had not made an investment. We had not made a first round pick investment in a quarterback, since Dan Marino. And, wondering why you don't have any success at the quarterback position, blah, 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 blah. We took other guys, Chad Henne, we signed guys, Chad Pennington, but nobody, no in-house grown product. So, but I understood what Tannehill was. Converted from wide receiver, played quarterback, went to wide receiver, went back to quarterback. And people complained about him because he held on to the ball too long. I understood why he held on to the ball too long. He's a former wide receiver. He understood that all I got to do is give these guys an extra second, and they're gonna beat the coverage. He was giving his guys, his wide receivers, a chance to get open. We didn't have the wide receivers to break open like that, like a Tyreek Hill would break open today. And I like to think if Tannehill had Tyreek, he sees that off the bat, and then you give me Adam Gase's version of Tannehill throwing to Tyreek, and boy, Tannehill to Tyreek Hill. I just thought about that one. It's not one. That's not my second Dolphin wish. I'll tell you my second Dolphin wish in a minute, but that would be a nice one. I guess that would have to be my third one, because it was at 2016 when Adam Gase had Ryan Tannehill throwing that pill like it was nobody business, and AJ Ajayi rushed for them 2,000 yards, man. Like, that was Max Tannehill right there. That was the best you was going to get out of Tannehill. That was who he was at the max. You put him behind a running game, and they walk up in the box, he's going to find you guy downfield. Look what he did in Tennessee. I rest my case. We did not build the team around Tannehill that he had in Tennessee. Fact. So, like I said, yeah, we didn't tank for Tannehill. Tannehill was supposed to hold the clipboard and evolve into the Dolphins' starting quarterback, but he was thrust and forced into the position of being the Dolphins' starting quarterback when he was not ready to do so. So you had to take the growing pains, you had to take the evolution of, and then it took a differently minded offensive coach to come in and change some of his philosophies and how he viewed the field. Because Ryan Tannehill was absolutely an athlete playing at quarterback. I'm not going to say anything like he was the greatest quarterback in Dolphins history. No, I wouldn't say nothing like that, but I would, you know, as a starter, I take that back. So you have to go Dan Marino, Greasy. Unfortunately, Jay Fiedler's in there, but I put Tannehill in front of Fiedler, then Fiedler, and then Tua. Yeah, in that order. No mistake. Say what you want to say about it. Oh, I'm so ready. I promise you I am. Please, keyboard warriors, your input is welcome. So yeah, they put Tannehill out there too early, but Tua was supposed to be hailed as the second coming of nice. Okay, the whole tank for Tua, you know, the organization, Chris Greer, they had already decided that they wanted Tua Tagovailoa until Joe Burrow came along, and Joe Burrow had that great year and won the national championship. Then he became the consensus number one. But before that, the organization had already made their mind up on Tua. They had, how they already made their mind up for Tua? Because they wanted to take for Tua, and they were going to pay Brian Flores to lose games. Now we'll get into that whole issue later on, because how they did Brian Flores, you're not going to ask any coach to lose games on purpose and then offer him $100,000 to lose games on purpose. But yet he found some way to take the mediocre overall team that it was. He had talent on the defense, but he made the defense play above its head. he made the defense a playoff caliber defense. But I'm not, get me revved up. I'm not ready for that one yet. We ain't gonna get into that one. I don't like how they did Brian Flores at all. But and that's on Chris Greer too. But again, it goes back to this whole Tua thing because the organization had already made its mind up about Tua. What head coach do you know that takes over the team and doesn't get his pick of a head coach? I mean, it doesn't get his pick. The head coach doesn't get his pick of a quarterback. 9 times out of 10, they go with that guy's choice, unless it's just some bad choice. But Flores wanted Jordan Love. For those of you who know, you know. If you don't, you don't. But Flores wanted Jordan Love. He did not want Tua Tagovailoa. Chris Greer in the Dolphins organization forced Tua on him because lo and behold, we were trying to tank for Tua. We won too many games to get the overall #1 pick, which was where Burrow went. But now here it is. We got the #5 overall pick, and Tua's just falling to our lap. There's no way that we can't take on it. This is too good of a lineup. The stars have aligned for us. We have to take Tua Tagovailoa. That is what the organization did to Brian Flores. I don't care what Omar Kelly says. They forced Tua Tagovailoa on that man. So in turn, you get to see. Yeah, I digress. I don't want to get it. I almost went too far with that. Chris Greer, Brian Flores, da da da. That's a whole other matter of fact. That would be a whole nother video. But we didn't tank for Tannehill. We tanked for Tua. Just put it like that. So the higher expectation is on Tua. The long-term contract was given to Tannehill, but it was a reasonable contract. It wasn't a break the bank contract. Whereas Tua's contract, the market is the market. That contract is actually a hindrance to our ability to build a roster right now. And if you know anything about roster building, you know that Tua needs a immaculate roster around him in order for him to be good. Just look at what happened at Alabama. Every player on your team is the #1, #2 player in the nation, first, second team All-American at every position around you. Your wide receivers, #1 and 2 in the nation. Your running back, #1 and 2 in the nation. Your left tackle, center, #1, #2 in the nation. All Americans, bro. It's hard to look bad in that offense. It's hard to look bad when everybody around you is an All-American. Is that a fair enough statement? We're not even going to get into the fact that that man got put on the bench. Yeah, he replaced Jalen Hurts, but Jalen Hurts replaced him too. Tua shrinks in the big moments, man. I'm getting off. I don't want to go that far. This is supposed to be my verification video about my fandom and how I became a fan and what I've watched over the years. But we can get all of that stuff later on. That'll be whoa. I got so many videos that'll come after that right there. But I'm just a guy. I'm nobody special. I'm just a fan giving my opinion. You don't like what I got to say? Start your own channel. I subscribe to you, you subscribe to me, and we just put it out there. Maybe the Dolphins front office hear us. Maybe they won't. They probably won't. We know they won't, but we got a right to stand on our soapbox and speak our truth as Dolphin fans as we see it. Right? Right. Okay. So moving on from that. Yeah, Adam Gase had them boys playing pretty good. They got to the playoffs. Tannehill got hurt. Matt Moore finished off. I firmly believe that if Tannehill had played that playoff game, we would have beaten Pittsburgh, Tasmania Davis. Um, we would have laid them boys out. We would have laid them out. Would have, just would have 31-30. We would have won that game up in Pittsburgh. We would have broke their heart. We would have crushed them. Last play of the game, touchdown on a field goal, something. We would have just crushed Pittsburgh. We would have took their manhood up in Pittsburgh if Tannehill had played that game. Matt Moore played the game and he didn't play well. Matt Moore, yeah, he just didn't play well that game. But he was good enough to get us the win, but nah, that team needed Tannehill at the quarterback in that particular game. So we lose that. And next year, Tannehill comes back too early, gets hurt, misses the whole year, and we come back with Jay Cutler. Oh, God, just, I don't even want to talk about that season, but Jay Cutler was there. He didn't care to be there. He was just collecting the check. That was not a fun football season to watch. I had more fun watching the 1-16 season than I did watching Jay Cutler's season. Just real talk. Yeah. And then after that, Tannehill came back and I believe we missed the playoffs and then they shut it down and tore it down and started with something else. And that's when Flores came in and Like I said, I don't like how they did Flores. Flores built you a playoff caliber defense. Maybe not a playoff winning defense, but a playoff caliber defense. He put the game plan together for the Patriots that won whatever what was it? It must have been the Super Bowl. Yeah, must have been the Super Bowl game. He put the game plan together to win it, much like Vic Fangio put the game plan together to beat Kansas City in the Super Bowl last year. Brian Flores did the same thing for the Patriots. This is what got him the notoriety as the defensive coordinator, even though he was like co-defensive coordinator or pass game defensive coordinator or something. He wasn't quite the defensive coordinator, but he was the next step away from it. But basically, he was running the defense. So we hired him as the head coach. And it's pretty clear that, he's a defensive minded guy, disciplinarian, and he has trouble building an offense. Okay. Those were the facts about Brian Flores. You didn't hear in that first year about how Brian Flores was difficult to deal with. He was a menace in the front office, et cetera, et cetera. You didn't hear none of that until year two. But what was year two? The year that they forced Tua on him. He did not want Tua. You forced Tua on him. So it's like, okay, if you're going to force this quarterback on me, then I'm going to control every other aspect that's got to do with my responsibilities and duties as a head coach. That's why he came off as a jerk to some people, like Omar Kelly says, people in the front office, blah, 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 blah. Player Minka Fitzpatrick, blah, 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 blah. Didn't like Brian Flores because he was a hard ass. But you see what's going on now, right? With Mike McDaniel, we don't have a hard ass enough. Yeah, they say he was the extreme of one end, Mike McDaniel's extreme of the other end. You got to find a balance between the two. Okay, whatever. This is my wish. This was my wish. If Brian Flores was so difficult to get along with, but the team itself was disciplined. In the environment in Miami, Florida, you got to have a guy that can run that team, that can hold that team together and be a disciplinarian to those guys. So, yeah, he might have been a little bit extreme, but again, I think that extremity came from him having to deal with Tua being his starting quarterback and then being told he's got to play him, being forced to start him because that was Ryan Fitzpatrick's team. But anyway, it comes down to it that Brian Flores gets fired because he's, insubordinate, tough to deal with, because he wouldn't lose games and tank. Okay. But my wish would have been if Chris Greer wouldn't have been the sellout Uncle Tom that he actually is, and we'll get into that into another video. I'm about to run out of time here. If we would have done that at some other time, and he would have just swallowed his pride and said, hey, B-Flow, listen, man, listen. I know you don't like Tua, but I believe in this kid. We've gone through two offenses since you've been here, and Chan Gailey's taken off. I got this idea of a guy who we can hire who I think can fix Tua and get the most out of him. I need you to keep running the defense the way that you're running it, brother, and let me do something to help out this offense. I have a vision. This is where Chris Greer could have actually imposed his vision on the team. This is where they work hand in hand. Brian Flores, you take care of the defense. I got a vision for how this offense could look, should look, and the guy who I think could work. So you go and you hire Mike McDaniel as the offensive coordinator to Brian Flores as head coach. That is my wish that I wish they would have done. Like, bro, you got Brian Flores' defenses out there with Mike McDaniel's offense. 2023, if Brian Flores was the head coach and Mike McDaniel was the offensive coordinator, the Miami Dolphins would have won the Super Bowl that year and possibly would have won back-to-back Super Bowls 2023, 2024. I firmly believe that with all my heart. If Brian Flores was the head coach and McDaniel was the offensive coordinator. But they fired my man because he was difficult to get along with. I think it was because he was zero tolerance. He wouldn't take that shit off of them. You forced me to take this little bit above average quarterback, and you want me to win these games after you asked me to lose games, but he's not the type of guy who can put us over the top. Tua is not the type of quarterback that can strap the team onto his back. Everything around him has to be in place in order for him to succeed. We'll get into more of that later on. But yeah, I'm just trying to keep it to the passion. I'm a Dolphin fan of the bro. We fired Flores. I was sick to my stomach. I was like, yo, whoever we get better be good. I was wanting John Gruden. He was going through his whole thing with the Raiders and the emails, and it was too soon to bring him back around. So um, they went with Mike McDaniel. There was a couple other folks who they, looked at, but I get no. I'm sorry, they didn't look at anybody else. They only interviewed Mike McDaniel, and they went after nobody else interviewed Mike McDaniel, but we brought him in. So he's here. He's the head coach now. He gets the most out of Tua. Um, Tua puts up these big numbers. 2023 finally stayed healthy or whatever. I'm gonna show y'all the video about why we should not have drafted Tua. We'll get into that. That'll be another video that I post. But this was just something that I wanted to just talk about my Dolphin fandom, man. You know, I'm going as much as I don't like Tua, and I don't like Tua, still want to see the boys win. I don't believe that we're going to win very much this year. I still got us at 8, 9 wins. Um, But who knows, man? I just want to talk about my Dolphin fandom, man. Do this is like a little verification video. Got the Dolphin flag behind me. Got my Dolphin shirt on, man. It's not. Wish I had my Dolphin earbuds, but I got an Zach Thomas pre-rookie card for y'all. You can get behind it because they need the black background, whatever, whatever. You know what I'm saying? Look at the man in the Hall of Fame. He belongs there. And I'm gonna do some other stuff, man. I got football cards that I'm gonna open and hopefully get a Dolphins collection going. I'm gonna get back to that because I miss collecting my football cards. But yeah, man, just wanted to use this as a little verification video, whatever. I don't have an editor. I don't do editing. I'm learning how to do all of that stuff. So for right now, it's just off the top of the head until I can come up with a script or I get an editor or something or the other. But it's just gonna be raw, unfiltered opinions, man. This is, you know, the eyeball test, armchair quarterback. You know what I mean? Do you really understand what you're looking at when you're watching a Dolphin, when you're watching football as a Dolphins fan? Or are you just a blind homer hoping that our team looks like what you see other teams do? And as this thing grows, I would like to see it grow. Like I said, I really want this to be about fan clubs all over the nation where the fish out of water, take over bars and all over and bars all over the country, different cities all over the country. So, um, and one of these days I will move back to the fish tank. I'll be in South Florida, Miami-Dade, maybe Broward. I don't know yet. I don't know what the future holds, but I just know that the spirit was moving me to finally get my YouTube channel up and going. Y'all can catch me on X, Homer J Dolphin at Homer J Dolphin. Um, I got to change the name, Trinity Soundworks, and all of that stuff. It's going to be the fish out of water. But anyway, that's my time. Just know that your boy's a diehard Dolphin fan. I roll with them boys, True Blue, Aqua and Orange, and fans up, man. No matter what happens, no matter what I say, because I'm gonna piss you off. I know I'm gonna piss you off. I have no doubts about that. But at the end of the day, I want all Dolphin fans to just agree that we love the Dolphins. We might not like how the stage that we're at, how we run in the organization, the players on the roster, coaches. We're gonna bump heads about all of that stuff. That's the whole point. You know, it should be a melting pot of ideas. But yeah, that's it for me, man. Fish out of water, all of that stuff. I learned how to put up the tags and all that stuff and text, and I'm still learning how to do that stuff. So I'm just, I'm not there yet, but I just felt like I needed to put a little bit of my Dolphin backstory out there and and my fandom and let that be the start of my channel. So fins up, fins be the dynasty, all that good stuff. We'll holler at you, man. Homer J Dolphin out.